RoboCop is one of my favorite science fiction movies from the 1980s. It centers around a Detroit police officer and family man named Alex Murphy, who was brutally murdered by a group of criminals and turned into a cyborg law enforcer called RoboCop by the mega corporation Omni Consumer Products, OCP. The film may draw some inspiration from campy and over-the-top superhero stories, but it has intense levels of graphic violence and discusses a lot of heavy themes regarding corporate greed, corruption, and an increase in crime being the result of the privatization of public services and the advancement of technology. RoboCop is an interesting, entertaining, and action-packed thrill ride that nails a lot of its superhero elements, but it also has a lot to say and gets you thinking with its strong social commentary. It's a must-watch, an instant classic. Despite being a very violent R-rated movie, the RoboCop character quickly became popular with children, and lots of tie-in merchandise was created. Comic books, novels, action figures, theme park rides, clothing, and of course, a variety of video game adaptations. Today, I wanted to review 3 of them, the ones I find to be the strongest based on each film in the original RoboCop trilogy. When it comes to the first RoboCop film, released in 1987, none of its home console adaptations delivered in my opinion. The best one was on the arcade, developed and published by Data East, that came out in 1988. It's a run-and-gun shooter with a few beat-em-up elements added in, that has you play as RoboCop, disposing of the criminal scum on the streets of Detroit, using your fists, 9mm handgun, the Auto 9, and the highly powerful and experimental Cobra assault cannon, which was seen at several points in the film. Many of the locations from the movie make their way into the game, like the narcotics factory, the construction yard and steel mill, the OCP headquarters, even the shooting range at the police station during training stages between a few of the levels in this cool first-person perspective. RoboCop, the arcade game, follows the events of the original film fairly accurately, with you going up against Clarence Boddicker's men in their gray truck. You know, the one that Clarence throws that guy out the back of, asking him, "Do you fly, Bobby?" You battle his goons at the construction site, who have commandeered cranes and wrecking balls, taking on the heavily armored so-called peacekeeping robots, the Ed-209, numerous times, and saving the CEO of OCP, the Old Man, from the clutches of Dick Jones, though the in-game model looks nothing like actor Ronnie Cox. I would have liked to see some kind of boss encounter against Clarence Boddicker in the game. The NES port of RoboCop featured a boss battle with him in the narcotics factory, but to my knowledge, he isn't in the arcade version. I also think it would have been cool to play as Alex Murphy in the first stage and witness his origin into RoboCop, though maybe it may have been too gruesome to depict in video game form. RoboCop, the arcade game, has an amazing presentation. I love the style of the graphics, the environments, the animations, the sound effects, the music. It's all very faithful to the 1987 film. The gameplay is simplistic, but that doesn't mean it isn't fun. Blasting guys left and right, causing countless explosions. It can be incredibly satisfying. The game isn't that difficult either, and can be beaten in around 30 minutes or so, which means it's easy to digest, and there's some replayability there. RoboCop 2 may not be as strong a film as its predecessor, but I still find it to be a solid and underrated sequel that further discusses a lot of the same themes present in the original. Sure, it has some issues. It completely ignored the arc Alex Murphy went through in the first film, regaining part of his humanity, but I still thought it had some entertaining bits, some cool action, and interesting visuals, even if the story and direction the whole thing went in was weaker. Just like the first film and its games, the home console versions of RoboCop 2 left a lot to be desired. The NES port, developed by Ocean Software, is absolute garbage. Sure, there are some cool title screens, but the in-game graphics look way too cartoony for my liking, and the controls are terrible. It's like RoboCop is on a planet with 100 times gravity. He feels heavy, and you have to build up momentum to move. When you jump, you slide around, and it's hard to land precisely on platforms. If you fail to collect enough nuke vials in a level, you get sent to a shooting gallery for recalibration, and then if you fail to get enough points in them, you get sent back to the previous level. It's a test of patience and comes down to trial and error. The arcade game of RoboCop 2, made once again by Data East, is the superior version and the most accurate to the film. Everything I love about the first game's graphics and gameplay carry over into this one, just dialed up to 11. It's another run and gun, but this time you have more of an area to walk around, and there is more of a focus on combat, because when enemies get right up next to you, you can throw them head first into the ground, which is awesome. There is more variety to the stages as well. Some of them are your standard side-scroller, but a few sections are shooting gallery style, and a couple levels have a first-person perspective, with you shooting at vehicles and helicopters on a motorcycle, and later in the game, Murphy's police car, which has its roof blown off by a rocket. The story of the game is just like the movie. Omni Consumer Products is attempting to bankrupt the city of Detroit so they can take it over and rebuild it into Delta City. They are in the process of designing a new RoboCop 2 that they plan on mass producing to replace the city's entire police force. The original RoboCop finds himself at war with a crime lord named Kane, who is manufacturing a new, highly addictive street drug named Nuke. Kane ends up being severely wounded and put on life support before his brain is taken by OCP and placed within the latest and most powerful RoboCop 2 model. I think RoboCop 2's arcade game holds up really well and is a lot of fun to play. It's more narratively driven than the previous title, featuring more cutscenes and text and everything. The various different models of RoboCop 2 you face off against throughout the levels, on top of the regular thugs, are creative and distinct enough that they don't become stale, and the final battle with Kane, RoboCop 2, is pretty damn epic, though I think it does last a bit too long, spanning several sections. All you do in it is jump and shoot, which can get a little exhausting on the hands. And here we are at RoboCop 3. The movie itself is without a doubt the weakest in the trilogy. By 1993, the series was far removed from where it had been originally. Orion Pictures, the producers of the RoboCop films, were facing bankruptcy, and in order to make as much money from RoboCop 3 as possible, they made it more kid-friendly, toning down the violence, profanity, references to drugs and prostitution, and its overall tone became campier, with the story centering around a Japanese company, the Kanemitsu Corporation, taking over OCP, implementing cyborg ninjas, and RoboCop even has a jetpack in this one. All these changes did was water down the grittiness that had made the first two RoboCop films so appealing, and the box office and critical reception of RoboCop 3 suffered. The best video game adaptation of RoboCop 3, if you want to call it that, was the one released for the Super Nintendo in 1992. Interestingly, it actually came out before the film did, which was slated for release in the summer of '92, but was delayed until the following year due to all the bankruptcy issues Orion was facing. There was an NES port, just like the previous two movies, but it wasn't as good. Its graphics looked like a mixture of those found in RoboCop 1 and 2 on NES, and were an improvement, but were not as attractive as its 16-bit counterpart. In between levels, you perform diagnostics on RoboCop, kind of like what happens in the movie, to repair damaged parts of his body. The title screen also has a little girl holding a machine gun sitting on Robo's shoulders, which I mean is kind of fucked up. RoboCop 3 on the SNES is a side-scrolling shooter, just like the arcade games. You can fire in multiple directions, and what's really cool, just like the gun arm attachment RoboCop used frequently in the third film, you can switch out your primary weapon to a multi-shot, large beam, flamethrower, and even rocket launcher, so there's quite a bit of variety. Unlike the arcade games though, where your default weapon had unlimited ammo, here you can run out, which sucks. When that happens, you are down to just using your fists, and because the levels have time limits, this could lead to disastrous results. Graphically, RoboCop 3 looks great. The character sprites and locations look accurate to the film. I think the standout level is the one taking place in the church, though it is really annoying. You have to locate two keys, which open separate doors. You're forced to backtrack and zigzag your way up and down a bunch of stairs, and the way RoboCop goes down them looks silly, like he's hopping on one foot. The biggest flaw with this game is its insane difficulty. Even with cheats, I couldn't make it to the end and capture footage of an entire playthrough. There are a couple flying sequences with the jetpack, and they are an absolute nightmare. So much shit is flying at you on screen, some of which I can't easily distinguish from the background, and I don't even know what half of it is supposed to be. It's ugly to look at. Even with invincibility activated, bizarrely, it doesn't apply to these levels. The health bar never depletes, but that's only an illusion. You still take damage the whole time. The last jetpack level right before the final boss is where I got stuck. I played it over and over and over again, and no matter what strategy I attempted, none of them seemed to work for me. I began to have an existential crisis while playing, asking myself, what the fuck am I doing with my life? I then proceeded to turn it off and have myself a long, hard cry. The only happiness I was getting was trying to direct RoboCop's fallen corpse to smack into a building or splatter on the pavement, and at that point, you start to question your sanity a little. Anyways, if I were to recommend any of these RoboCop games, then I would say play the first two on the arcades. They are really fun, not too arduous to sit through, and are faithful recreations of the films they are based off of. RoboCop 3 has its moments, but its high difficulty drags it down into the mud. I would avoid that one, unless you have been urged by some morbid curiosity or something. I want to thank you all for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you'd like to support what it is that I do, please subscribe to the channel, hit that bell icon for notifications, and become a producer over on patreon.com if you can. You can also nominate future games for me to review over there as well. I will see you all in the next one. Take care, stay safe, and always stay nerdy.